My brother convinced me to invest $200,000 my inheritance in our family restaurant, then fired me a week later. Blood doesn't make you qualified, he mocked with his friends. I smiled, wished him well, then quietly took the final step to reclaim what was rightfully mine. His downfall began. The check cleared on a Tuesday morning in September, and I watched $200,000 disappear from my account with the kind of calm satisfaction that comes from making exactly the right decision. Brady had called me 3 times that morning already, his voice crackling with excitement through my phone as I sat in my home office, surrounded by 15 years of marketing awards and client testimonials that represented everything I had built from nothing. "Linda, it's happening. The money's here and I'm meeting with the contractors this afternoon." His enthusiasm carried through the phone with such genuine joy that I found myself smiling at my computer screen. "I can't believe you actually did this. I can't believe you believe in me this much." I did believe in him. More than any bank had been willing to when his credit still carried the damage from that food truck disaster 3 years earlier. More than our parents had when they suggested he find a stable job, instead of chasing culinary dreams. I believed in the brother who had spent our entire childhood creating elaborate meals for our family, turning every holiday into a showcase of his natural talent. Before we continue with Linda's journey, I want to thank you for joining me in exploring stories about family loyalty and business integrity. If you believe that trust and honesty should define our closest relationships, please consider subscribing to support these meaningful narratives. Now let's see how Linda's world completely changes. The amount represented more than just money to me. That $200,000 was my entire divorce settlement, carefully invested and grown through years of disciplined saving and smart consulting contracts. It was my emergency fund, my retirement cushion, my independence made tangible. Handing it over to Brady felt both terrifying and absolutely right, because his restaurant vision had captured my imagination from the moment he first described it 6 months earlier. We had been sitting in my sunlit kitchen on a Sunday morning, Brady sketching frantically on napkins while I made coffee and tried to keep up with his rapid-fire explanations. His business plan was remarkably thorough for someone the banks had dismissed as a dreamer. He had researched everything from food costs to local dining trends, identified the perfect location, and developed a menu that balanced ambitious cuisine with approachable pricing. "Look, Linda, I know this sounds crazy, but I've learned from every mistake I made with the food truck." He had spread his sketches across my kitchen table, his dark eyes bright with possibility. "The problem before was trying to do everything alone. This time I want a real partner. Someone I trust completely. Someone who understands business the way I understand food." The partnership he proposed was elegant in its simplicity. My investment and business expertise combined with his culinary vision and operational management. Equal ownership, shared decision-making, complementary skills. He promised to handle everything related to food and kitchen operations while I managed the business side, from supplier negotiations to staff scheduling. We would split profits down the middle and build something together that neither of us could create alone. The months that followed felt like the most productive and enjoyable period of my adult life. We toured potential locations together, Brady evaluating kitchen layouts while I analyzed foot traffic and lease terms. We spent countless hours in restaurant supply stores, debating everything from plate designs to the perfect coffee machine. Brady's enthusiasm for quality was infectious, and I found myself getting genuinely excited about details I had never considered important. Our weekend mornings became working sessions that felt more like play. I would arrive at the chosen location early, coffee in hand, to find Brady already there measuring spaces and visualizing equipment placement. We painted walls together, Brady handling the detail work around windows and fixtures while I managed the broad surfaces with practiced efficiency. Our conversation during those long painting sessions ranged from menu planning to marketing strategies, with Brady occasionally breaking into impromptu cooking demonstrations using imaginary ingredients. The vintage Edison bulbs were Brady's idea, but finding them became my personal mission. I spent 3 weeks tracking down the perfect supplier, someone who could provide enough bulbs to create the warm, intimate atmosphere Brady envisioned without breaking our lighting budget. When they finally arrived and we installed them together, the transformation was magical. The harsh construction lighting gave way to golden warmth that made even our paint-splattered work clothes look elegant. Brady's attention to detail extended to every aspect of the restaurant's design. He insisted on testing dozens of wine glasses before selecting the perfect shape for our varietals. He researched local farms and artisanal producers, building relationships with suppliers who shared his commitment to quality ingredients. When we finally found the right wine distributor, someone who understood both quality and pricing constraints, Brady's excitement was so genuine that I felt proud of my own negotiating skills in ways I had never experienced with corporate clients. The family embraced our project with enthusiasm that surprised me. Cousin David, who ran his own marketing firm, offered to design our promotional materials at cost and spent hours with us developing the restaurant's visual identity. Aunt Patricia, normally reserved about family business ventures, began telling her book club about our upcoming opening and volunteered to help coordinate our soft launch event. Family dinners became restaurant planning sessions, with Brady bringing samples of new recipes and me sharing updates on permit applications and supplier negotiations. Our parents, initially skeptical about Brady's return to food service, gradually warmed to the professional approach we were taking. They could see that this venture was different from the impulsive food truck experiment, grounded in careful planning and genuine partnership. Opening night arrived faster than either of us expected, despite months of preparation. I stood at the hostess station, watching Brady command the kitchen through the service window, and felt a satisfaction deeper than any client success had ever provided. The dining room filled with friends, family, and curious locals, all eager to experience what Brady had created. Every table received dishes that reflected his culinary vision perfectly executed, while I managed reservations and ensured smooth service with an ease that surprised even me. The local food critic arrived unannounced midway through service, and I watched Brady rise to the challenge with complete composure. He prepared a tasting menu that showcased our concept beautifully, and I coordinated with our servers to ensure flawless presentation. When the critic smiled and asked to speak with the chef, I knew we had succeeded beyond our original expectations. By closing time, we had served 96 customers, received 3 requests for catering quotes, and collected enough positive feedback to fill a testimonial book. Brady and I stood alone in the dining room after the last customer left, surrounded by empty wine glasses and the satisfied exhaustion that comes from executing a perfect plan. "We actually did it," Brady said, opening a bottle of champagne we had been saving for this moment. "Equal partners in something real." The champagne tasted like victory and possibility, and as we discussed expansion plans and future menu development, I felt certain we had built something lasting together. 3 months later, I pushed through the heavy glass door of our restaurant, rain drumming against the windows and my purse heavy with the partnership papers I had finally gotten around to having drawn up. The familiar warmth should have embraced me, but something felt different the moment I stepped inside. Brady stood behind the mahogany bar we had selected together, but his usual smile was nowhere to be found. "Linda, we need to talk." His voice carried a formality I had never heard before, the kind of tone he might use with a difficult supplier or an unsatisfied customer. He did not look up from the glass he was polishing, his movements mechanical and distant. I approached the bar slowly, my heels clicking against the hardwood floors we had chosen after visiting 6 different showrooms. The restaurant was empty except for us, the dinner service finished and the staff dismissed for the evening. This should have been perfect timing for our long-overdue paperwork session, but Brady's posture radiated tension that made my stomach clench with unexpected anxiety. Of course, I brought the partnership documents we discussed. I patted my purse where the legal papers sat folded and ready for signatures. Jennifer did an excellent job with the terms. Everything we agreed on is spelled out clearly. Brady finally looked up and his expression stopped me cold. His eyes held none of the warmth that had characterized our working relationship for the past year. Instead, I saw calculation in something that looked disturbingly like pity. "That's what I want to discuss. I've been thinking about our arrangement and I've decided it needs to change." He set the glass down with deliberate precision, each movement controlled and final. "The thing is, Linda, I want to buy you out." The words seemed to echo in the empty dining room, bouncing off the Edison bulb fixtures we had installed together and the exposed brick walls I had personally negotiated with 3 different contractors to achieve. Buy me out. As if I were some anonymous investor rather than his equal partner in creating this dream. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears, higher and tighter than usual. My hands began to tremble and I gripped my purse more firmly to hide the reaction. I'll pay you back the 200,000, of course. With interest. But I've realized that having a partner complicates things in ways I didn't anticipate. Brady's tone remained businesslike, as if he were discussing the weekly produce order rather than dismantling everything we had built together. This needs to be my restaurant. My vision. My responsibility. The familiar dining room suddenly felt alien, like a movie set designed to look like our restaurant but missing some essential element that made it real. I stared at Brady, searching his face for some sign that this was an elaborate joke or a test of some kind. The brother who had thanked me tearfully on opening night seemed to have been replaced by a stranger wearing his face. Brady, we have an agreement. You promised me equal partnership in exchange for my investment. I have it recorded on my phone. I fumbled for my device, my fingers clumsy with shock and rising panic. His laugh was sharp and unfamiliar. A recording, Linda? That's not legally binding. Besides, you were an investor, not a partner. There's a difference. I found the file and played it, Brady's voice from 6 months earlier filling the restaurant with devastating clarity. Put in the 200,000 and we'll be 50-50 partners. I promise. The words hung in the air between us, indisputable evidence of what he had committed to when he needed my money. Brady listened to his own voice with no visible emotion, as if hearing a stranger discuss someone else's business. When the recording ended, he shrugged with calculated indifference. Oral agreements are notoriously difficult to enforce, especially in restaurant partnerships. Any lawyer will tell you that. His professional detachment was more chilling than outright anger would have been. Look, Linda, I appreciate everything you've done. But I'm the one who built this place from nothing. I'm the one with culinary training and restaurant experience. I'm the one who works here every day managing staff and creating menus and dealing with customers. From nothing. The phrase reverberated through my consciousness as I processed the complete rewriting of our shared history. Nothing. As if my $200,000 had materialized from thin air. As if the months of planning and preparation had involved only him. As if my negotiating skills and business expertise had contributed nothing to our success. $200,000 isn't nothing, I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt. Neither were all those weekends we spent here together, planning and working and building this place as partners. I'll pay you back every penny with 12% interest. That's more than generous. Brady reached beneath the bar and produced a manila folder, thick with official-looking documents. I've already had the paperwork prepared. You can sign tonight and we'll handle the transfer of funds through my attorney. The folder sat between us like a weapon, its presence revealing the premeditated nature of his betrayal. This was not a sudden decision or an emotional reaction to partnership stress. Brady had planned this confrontation, consulted lawyers, and prepared legal documents while continuing to work beside me as if nothing had changed. My mind raced through memories of our childhood, when I had consistently defended Brady against our parents' skepticism about his cooking ambitions. I remembered the countless times I had loaned him money during his struggling years, never asking for formal agreements or interest payments because family trust made contracts unnecessary. I thought about the failed food truck venture that had damaged his credit so severely that banks refused his loan applications, making my investment his only path to restaurant ownership. The $200,000 represented more than my available cash. It was my entire divorce settlement, carefully saved and invested over 3 years of rebuilding my life after my marriage ended. I had trusted Brady with more money than I had ever given my ex-husband, more than I had in my retirement accounts, more than I had thought I would ever risk on any single investment. You're serious about this? The statement came out flat and final, not really a question. Dead serious. I've already spoken with my lawyer about the transition process. Brady's expression remained impassive, but I caught a flicker of something that might have been guilt before he looked away. You can sign the buyout agreement tonight, or we can do this the hard way through attorneys and formal legal proceedings. The threat was unmistakable. Sign his papers and accept his terms, or face a protracted legal battle that would cost both of us time and money with no guaranteed outcome. He was betting that I would choose the easy path rather than fight for what we had originally agreed upon. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady beneath me. The restaurant that had felt like home for the past year now seemed hostile and foreign, filled with furniture I had helped select and decorations that reflected our shared vision but were apparently his alone. I need time to think about this. The words came out automatically, a placeholder response while my mind struggled to process the magnitude of his betrayal. Brady nodded curtly. Take all the time you need. But Linda, one way or another this partnership ends. I won't be held back by someone who doesn't understand the restaurant business. The rain had intensified by the time I reached my car, each drop feeling like a small, cold accusation against my skin. I sat in the driver's seat for several minutes, hands shaking too badly to insert the key, while Brady's words echoed through my consciousness and the familiar restaurant glowed mockingly in my rearview mirror. The 40-minute drive home passed in a blur of rain-streaked windshields and replaying conversations. My house greeted me with the same silence it always had, but tonight the quiet felt accusatory, as if the walls themselves were questioning how I could have been so naive. I dropped my purse on the kitchen counter, the partnership papers still folded inside, now useless artifacts of my misplaced trust. Sleep was impossible. I moved through my house like a restless spirit, pacing from the living room to the kitchen to my home office and back again. Each room held memories of planning sessions with Brady, phone calls about supplier negotiations, late-night conversations about menu development. The dining room table where we had spread contractor estimates and equipment catalogs now seemed like a crime scene, the location where I had been systematically deceived. My mind cycled through potential responses with increasing intensity. Immediate confrontation appealed to the rage burning in my chest. I could return to the restaurant tomorrow morning, bring witnesses, and demand he honor our agreement in front of his staff and customers. The public humiliation might force him to reconsider his position, but it would also destroy any possibility of working together professionally. Legal action offered the satisfaction of formal vindication, but Jennifer's warnings from my divorce proceedings echoed in my memory. Restaurant partnerships were notoriously complex, and oral agreements created evidentiary challenges that could drag litigation out for years. Even if I won, the victory might come at the cost of destroying the business we had both invested in creating. Public exposure tempted me with its swift justice. I could contact the local business journal that had featured Brady's success story, provide them with the recorded conversation, and watch his reputation crumble under the weight of documented fraud. The thought of his embarrassment provided momentary satisfaction, but it would also eliminate any chance of recovering my investment or maintaining family relationships. Family intervention represented the most appealing option initially. Our parents had always trusted me to resolve conflicts between their children, and they would certainly be horrified to learn about Brady's betrayal. But involving them would transform a business dispute into a family crisis, potentially damaging relationships that extended far beyond my conflict with Brady. By 3 a.m, I found myself questioning not just Brady's betrayal but my own judgment. How had I missed the signs of his true character? Had there been moments during our partnership when his selfishness showed through? I replayed months of conversations, searching for clues I had overlooked, warnings I had ignored, moments when his mask had slipped. At dawn, I called Jennifer from my kitchen, where Brady had first sketched his restaurant vision on napkins 6 months earlier. Her professional voice provided a stark contrast to my emotional turmoil, but I needed her objective perspective on my legal options. Linda, I understand you're upset, but we need to discuss this rationally. Jennifer's tone was patient but firm. Oral partnership agreements can be enforceable, especially with supporting evidence like your recording. However, restaurant litigation is particularly complex because of the operational and financial entanglements involved. She explained the challenges with devastating clarity. Proving the intent behind our original agreement would require extensive documentation and witness testimony. Brady's subsequent actions as sole owner would complicate any partnership claims. The litigation process could easily consume 2 years and legal fees that exceeded my original investment. Even if we win, the restaurant might not survive the process, Jennifer continued. Business partnerships that end in court rarely recover operationally. You could end up with a legal victory and a worthless asset. The conversation forced me to confront an uncomfortable reality. Legal victory might prove Pyrrhic, destroying the business while providing hollow satisfaction. Jennifer's professional detachment highlighted how deeply personal this betrayal felt, extending far beyond mere financial considerations into questions of trust, loyalty, and family bonds. After ending the call, I decided to reach out to cousin David, hoping his marketing expertise might provide insight into Brady's business strategy. What I discovered instead was another layer of betrayal that left me questioning everything I thought I knew about my brother's character. "Linda, I'm glad you called," David said, his voice carrying an uncomfortable tension I had noticed at recent family gatherings. "Brady mentioned you were having some disagreements about the restaurant arrangement." The careful phrasing immediately put me on alert. "What exactly did he tell you?" David's hesitation confirmed my suspicions before he spoke. "He said you were trying to claim ownership beyond what you had actually invested. That you wanted credit for his hard work just because you wrote a check." The words stung with their calculated cruelty. Brady had not only stolen my partnership but had preemptively poisoned family relationships by recasting me as a greedy opportunist. The systematic nature of his deception became clear as David continued explaining the conversations they had shared over recent weeks. According to Brady's version, I had provided a loan rather than partnership investment and was now attempting to manipulate my way into undeserved ownership. He had portrayed himself as the victim of my supposed greed, a hard-working chef being taken advantage of by his demanding sister. The lies were sophisticated enough to sound plausible, particularly to family members who lacked detailed knowledge of our business arrangements. "David, that's not what happened at all," I said, my voice tight with controlled anger. "I have recordings of our original agreement. Brady promised me equal partnership in exchange for my investment." The silence on David's end stretched uncomfortably before he responded. "Linda, I don't want to get involved in family business disputes." But Brady seemed genuinely frustrated about the situation. The conversation ended awkwardly, leaving me to process the full scope of Brady's manipulation. He had not only betrayed our partnership but had systematically undermined my standing within our extended family. Aunt Patricia's recent coolness at family gatherings now made perfect sense, as did the subtle changes in how relatives interacted with me during recent visits. Brady's deception extended far beyond our business relationship into calculated manipulation of family dynamics. He had anticipated my potential responses and preemptively neutralized family support by positioning himself as the victim of my supposed greed. The sophistication of his strategy revealed a level of premeditation that made his betrayal even more devastating. As morning light filled my kitchen, I realized that conventional responses would prove inadequate for the magnitude of what Brady had done. He had stolen my partnership, rewritten our shared history, and poisoned family relationships through systematic deception. Any response I chose needed to match his methodical betrayal with equally strategic consequences. The solution that emerged felt both patient and inevitable. I would become Brady's shadow, documenting his lies and contradictions while systematically undermining the foundation of dishonesty on which he had built his success. Rather than destroying him immediately, I would allow him to enjoy his stolen victory fully before revealing its fundamental instability. The strategy appealed to my sense of poetic justice. Brady had used my investment to build his restaurant empire while erasing my contributions from the narrative. I would use his own success against him, allowing his lies to accumulate until their weight became unsustainable. When the moment was right, I would present him with a choice between acknowledging the truth or watching his reputation crumble under documented evidence of fraud. For the first time since leaving the restaurant, I felt calm. Brady had chosen to play a long game of deception and manipulation. Now I would show him exactly how that game was won. The transformation began immediately. I cleared my dining room table of its usual magazines and mail, replacing them with manila folders, a laptop, and a printer that would become essential tools in documenting Brady's systematic deception. My home office, previously dedicated to marketing consulting work, evolved into a command center focused entirely on my brother's public statements and business activities. Social media provided the most immediate source of evidence. Brady's Instagram account, which I had helped him create to promote the restaurant, now served as a daily chronicle of lies. Each post celebrating my vision or my restaurant became a screenshot saved to my growing digital archive. His captions consistently used singular pronouns, describing menu innovations and business decisions as solely his achievements. The photos themselves told the story he wanted the world to believe. A solo entrepreneur who had built success through individual determination and culinary talent. Facebook yielded even more damaging content. Brady's business page featured an About section that described the restaurant's founding story in terms that completely erased my involvement. According to his version, he had invested everything I had saved and took the biggest risk of my life to open the establishment. The narrative positioned him as a courageous dreamer who had overcome financial obstacles through personal sacrifice, with no mention of external investment or partnership agreements. His LinkedIn profile proved particularly revealing. The professional networking site showcased Brady as owner and executive chef, without any acknowledgement of co-ownership or investment partners. His experience section detailed the restaurant's development as a solo venture, describing challenges he had personally overcome and victories he had independently achieved. The language was carefully crafted to suggest complete ownership while avoiding outright lies about specific financial details. Twitter provided a real-time stream of his thoughts and promotional activities. Brady regularly shared insights about restaurant management, entrepreneurship, and culinary innovation, always speaking from the authority of someone who had built his business alone. His engagement with other local business owners reinforced this narrative, as he participated in conversations about startup challenges and entrepreneurial journeys without ever mentioning partnership arrangements or investor relationships. The local Business Journal article arrived in my email inbox 3 weeks into my documentation project, forwarded by a friend who thought I would enjoy reading about Brady's success. The feature story, titled From Food Truck Failure to Fine Dining Success, presented Brady as a resilient entrepreneur who had learned from early mistakes to build the town's most popular new restaurant. The journalist had clearly been charmed by Brady's charisma and apparent authenticity, crafting a narrative that portrayed him as a self-made success story. The article's most damaging lie appeared in its opening paragraph. Brady Chin invested his life savings of $200,000 to transform a former retail space into the sophisticated dining destination that has become the talk of the town. The specific dollar amount was particularly galling, as it represented exactly the sum I had provided for our partnership. Brady had not only stolen credit for my investment but had appropriated the precise financial details as evidence of his personal sacrifice. The accompanying photograph captured Brady standing confidently behind the mahogany bar we had selected together, his expression conveying the quiet satisfaction of someone who had achieved his dreams through hard work and determination. The image would have moved me to pride 6 months earlier, but now it felt like evidence of calculated fraud. Every element visible in the photo represented choices we had made together, purchases funded by my investment, design decisions that reflected our collaborative vision. I printed multiple copies of the article and added it to my growing collection of evidence. The Business Journal's credibility would make Brady's lies particularly damaging when the truth eventually emerged. Local business leaders and potential customers had formed their opinions about the restaurant based on this fraudulent narrative, making any future correction both more necessary and more devastating to Brady's reputation. My intelligence gathering extended beyond digital documentation. The farmers' market on Saturday mornings became a regular destination, not just for my own grocery shopping but to observe Brady's interactions with suppliers. I positioned myself at strategic locations where I could overhear conversations without appearing to eavesdrop, learning about his vendor relationships and payment practices. Brady's behavior at these markets revealed aspects of his character I had previously overlooked. He spoke to suppliers with the casual authority of someone accustomed to being the sole decision-maker, never mentioning partnership agreements or shared ownership. His conversations focused entirely on his personal preferences and individual business needs, reinforcing the narrative that he operated independently. Wine shops provided another source of intelligence. Brady's selection process was meticulous and personal, reflecting his genuine expertise in pairing wines with his culinary creations. However, his interactions with shop owners consistently positioned him as the restaurant's sole proprietor. He discussed inventory decisions and budget constraints as his exclusive concerns, never acknowledging that these choices might involve partner consultation or shared financial responsibility. Professional networking events offered the most comprehensive view of Brady's public persona. Chamber of Commerce meetings, restaurant association gatherings, and industry conferences provided venues where he could establish relationships with other business owners while reinforcing his solo entrepreneur identity. I began attending these events myself, not as his business partner but as a local professional interested in supporting community commerce. My presence at these gatherings served multiple purposes. It allowed me to observe Brady's networking style while establishing my own visibility within the business community. Other attendees gradually became aware of me as Brady's sister, creating opportunities for casual conversations about the restaurant and our family's pride in his achievement. These interactions provided valuable intelligence about how Brady presented himself to peers while positioning me for future conversations about the restaurant's actual ownership structure. Family gatherings became exercises in careful observation and strategic communication. Aunt Patricia's continued coolness confirmed that Brady's manipulation had successfully poisoned her perception of me. Her interactions were polite but distant, lacking the warmth that had characterized our relationship for decades. During conversations about the restaurant, she directed her questions and comments exclusively to Brady, treating me as a peripheral figure rather than someone with intimate knowledge of the business. Cousin David proved more complicated to navigate. His marketing expertise made him valuable to Brady's promotional efforts, but it also meant he had access to detailed information about the restaurant's operations and positioning. David's behavior suggested internal conflict between his professional relationship with Brady and his personal loyalty to our extended family. His conversations carried subtle tensions that indicated he was uncomfortable with the situation but unwilling to take sides in what he perceived as a sibling business dispute. I maintained careful notes about each family interaction, documenting the specific ways Brady's lies had influenced relationships and identifying family members who remained neutral or potentially supportive. These observations would become crucial when the time came to present the truth, as I would need to understand which relationships could be repaired and which might require more extensive intervention. The documentation process provided unexpected emotional benefits alongside its strategic value. The methodical collection and organization of evidence created psychological distance from the immediate pain of Brady's betrayal. Each new piece of fraudulent content became data rather than personal injury, allowing me to maintain the clinical objectivity necessary for long-term planning. By the end of my first month of surveillance, I had accumulated a comprehensive portfolio of Brady's deception. The evidence revealed not just individual lies but a systematic pattern of fraud that extended across multiple platforms and audiences. Brady had not simply failed to credit my contributions. He had actively constructed an alternative history that positioned him as the sole architect of our shared success. The first conversation happened almost by accident. I was selecting tomatoes at Mrs. Henderson's produce stand when she mentioned how much she enjoyed working with Brady, praising his commitment to quality ingredients and consistent orders. The opening felt natural, so I took it. "He's always been passionate about food," I said, weighing a perfectly ripe heirloom tomato in my palm. "I'm so proud that my investment helped him finally achieve his dream." Mrs. Henderson's hands paused over her display of summer squash. "Your investment?" "The restaurant startup costs $200,000 is a significant amount, but seeing his success makes every penny worthwhile." I kept my tone light and conversational, the way you might discuss any family business venture. "Oh." She arranged the squash with unusual attention to detail. "Brady mentioned he had saved for years to open the restaurant. Well, family investments are still savings in a way, aren't they?" I smiled warmly. "I just worry sometimes that he's not returning my calls about our partnership as promptly as he used to. You know how busy restaurant owners get." The word partnership hung between us like a question mark. Mrs. Henderson nodded slowly, but her expression carried new uncertainty. I purchased my tomatoes and left, knowing that small seeds of doubt often grew in unexpected directions. 3 days later, Brady called me for the first time since our confrontation at the restaurant. His voice carried a tension I had not heard before. "Linda, I ran into Mrs. Henderson at the market yesterday. She seemed confused about our business arrangement." "Did she? I hope I didn't say anything inappropriate when we spoke. I'm just so proud of what we've built together." I kept my voice genuinely warm, as if discussing a minor misunderstanding rather than strategic communication. "What exactly did you tell her?" "Nothing specific. Just family conversation about supporting your dream." "Why? Is there a problem?" Brady's pause stretched long enough to reveal his uncertainty. "No problem. I just want to make sure there aren't any misunderstandings about the restaurant's ownership structure." "Of course not. I would never want to create confusion about your wonderful success." The conversation ended with Brady sounding less satisfied than he had hoped to be. I had answered his questions honestly while providing no ammunition for accusations of malicious interference. The call confirmed that my approach was having its intended effect. Similar conversations began occurring throughout Brady's supplier network. At the wine shop where he sourced his carefully curated selection, I struck up a discussion with the owner about local restaurant trends. "My brother Brady has such excellent taste in wines," I mentioned while browsing their premium selections. "I'm amazed at how well the restaurant is doing, especially considering the significant startup investment we made together." The shop owner, a chatty man named Robert who clearly enjoyed discussing his business relationships, looked intrigued. "Brady's got a great palate. He mentioned saving for years to get the place opened. Family support makes those dreams possible, doesn't it? Though I have to admit, I've been a little concerned lately that our communication about the partnership hasn't been as clear as it should be." Robert's attention sharpened at the word partnership. I could see him mentally reviewing his conversations with Brady, looking for details that suddenly seemed important. Within 2 weeks, the effects became visible. Mrs. Henderson began requesting payment upon delivery rather than extending her usual 30-day terms. Robert started asking for partial payments upfront on larger wine orders. These changes reflected not punitive measures but the natural caution of business people who had heard conflicting information about their customers' financial structure. Brady's cash flow, previously manageable through standard supplier credit arrangements, tightened noticeably. I observed him during my carefully timed visits to his professional ecosystem, noting the subtle stress that appeared in his interactions with vendors. His conversations became more focused on payment schedules and less on the collaborative relationship building that had characterized his earlier supplier interactions. Family gatherings provided the perfect venues for reinforcing my narrative while maintaining complete plausible deniability. Sunday dinner at our parents' house became a strategic opportunity disguised as normal family interaction. "Brady, the restaurant looked absolutely packed last weekend," I said, passing him the mashed potatoes our mother had prepared. "I'm just so proud that my investment helped make your vision possible." The word, investment, was carefully chosen for its accuracy and impact. Brady's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he could not object without explaining why my support should not be acknowledged publicly. "Linda's been incredibly supportive," he replied, his tone controlled but lacking warmth. "The restaurant's success reflects a lot of hard work." "Hard work and smart financial planning," I agreed. "Though I have to admit, I've been a little confused lately about our communication regarding the partnership details. I keep hoping we can sit down and clarify everything soon." Our parents exchanged glances that suggested they were beginning to sense undercurrents they did not fully understand. Aunt Patricia, still influenced by Brady's earlier manipulation, remained noticeably cool toward me, but other family members began asking subtle questions about the restaurant's development and ownership structure. These family conversations served multiple strategic purposes. They established witnesses to my consistent narrative about partnership and investment. They created opportunities to observe Brady's reactions under social pressure. Most importantly, they positioned me as someone seeking clarification rather than someone making accusations, maintaining my moral authority throughout the developing conflict. The psychological pressure on Brady became increasingly visible over the following month. His posture at networking events shifted from confident entrepreneurship to defensive management. His interactions with suppliers required more attention to payment timing and terms rather than focusing primarily on product quality and relationship building. I watched these changes from strategic distances, never inserting myself directly into his business operations but allowing the consequences of his own dishonesty to create mounting tension. Brady's success continued, but the foundation of lies required constant maintenance that diverted energy from growth and innovation. His exhaustion became apparent in subtle ways that probably escaped casual observers but were obvious to someone who had known him since childhood. The easy confidence that had characterized his public persona during the restaurant's early months gave way to controlled wariness. His smiles at networking events appeared more practiced than spontaneous. His conversations with family members carried undertones of irritation that suggested he felt pressured from multiple directions. Most tellingly, Brady began avoiding situations where he might encounter me unexpectedly. Family gatherings that he had previously attended with enthusiasm became obligations he fulfilled with dutiful efficiency. His responses to casual questions about restaurant operations became shorter and more defensive, lacking the proud detail that had characterized his earlier explanations. The campaign was achieving exactly the psychological pressure I had intended without crossing any ethical boundaries. I was not spreading lies or making false accusations. Instead, I was sharing accurate information about my role in the restaurant's development while expressing genuine concern about our unclear partnership status. Brady's growing discomfort reflected the natural consequences of building success on a foundation of systematic deception. His suppliers were simply responding to conflicting information by exercising reasonable business caution. Family members were naturally confused by inconsistencies in the stories they heard. Brady's stress resulted from the energy required to maintain multiple versions of the truth rather than from any malicious attack on his character. By the end of the second month, Brady's carefully constructed narrative had begun requiring more maintenance than his actual business operations. The elegant simplicity of his solo entrepreneur identity had been replaced by the complex challenge of managing contradictory information while maintaining professional relationships and family harmony. I continued observing these developments with patient satisfaction, knowing that Brady was approaching the breaking point where maintaining his deception would become more costly than acknowledging the truth. 5 months of careful pressure had created exactly the conditions I had been working toward. Brady's world was closing in from multiple directions simultaneously, and I could see the toll it was taking on him during my strategic observations. The confident entrepreneur who had betrayed me in February now moved through his daily routine with the careful tension of someone managing too many fragile relationships at once. The supplier situation had evolved beyond simple payment timing into a web of complicated negotiations that consumed increasing amounts of Brady's attention. Mrs. Henderson no longer simply delivered produce on schedule. Each transaction required advance confirmation and immediate payment. The wine distributor had instituted a policy requiring partial upfront payment on orders exceeding $500, citing evolving credit policies that everyone understood meant uncertainty about the restaurant's financial stability. More concerning for Brady was the ripple effect these changes had created throughout his entire vendor network. Other suppliers, hearing about modified payment terms through small-town business networks, had begun exercising similar caution. The bakery that provided fresh bread daily now required weekly payment rather than monthly billing. The specialty cheese supplier requested references before extending any credit terms. The organic farm that had been providing seasonal vegetables on handshake agreements suddenly wanted written contracts with clear payment schedules. These individual changes might have been manageable, but their collective impact strained both Brady's cash flow and his time management. Relationships that had operated smoothly through mutual trust now required constant attention and negotiation. Brady found himself spending mornings on vendor calls that had previously been dedicated to menu development and kitchen preparation. The staff had begun sensing the underlying tension without understanding its source. I observed this during my periodic visits to the restaurant, noting how servers exchanged glances when Brady's voice carried sharp irritation during busy service periods. The kitchen assistants moved with the careful efficiency of people who recognized their boss was under unusual stress but could not identify the reason. Family dynamics added another layer of pressure that Brady struggled to navigate. Our parents had begun asking more pointed questions about the restaurant's ownership structure, prompted by my consistent references to partnership and investment during family gatherings. They were not taking sides in what they perceived as a sibling business dispute, but their confusion about conflicting information created additional stress for Brady. Aunt Patricia maintained her coolness toward me, but even she had begun expressing concern about family harmony to other relatives. Cousin David found himself in an increasingly uncomfortable position as both Brady's marketing consultant and a family member who was hearing contradictory information about their business relationship. His professional relationship with Brady required him to support the solo entrepreneur narrative, but family loyalty made him question the complete absence of my involvement in restaurant operations. The psychological toll on Brady became increasingly visible to anyone who knew him well. His social media posts, which had previously showcased confident enthusiasm about restaurant life, became more focused on food photography and less on personal commentary. His networking activities continued, but with less spontaneous engagement and more scripted professionalism. By March, Brady's exhaustion was evident in subtle physical changes that probably escaped casual observation but were obvious to someone monitoring his condition. His posture carried new tension, particularly in his shoulders and neck. His facial expressions required more conscious control, lacking the natural ease that had characterized his public interactions during the restaurant's early success. The perfect moment arrived on a Tuesday evening after what I knew had been an exceptionally busy dinner service. I had called the restaurant earlier, using the pretense of making a reservation to confirm that Brady would be working late on administrative tasks. The hostess mentioned that he always stayed after closing on Tuesdays to handle paperwork and prepare for the week ahead. I parked across the street from the restaurant at 9:30, after the last customers had departed and the staff had finished their closing duties. Through the office window, I could see Brady hunched over his desk, surrounded by the detritus of restaurant management that reflected his deteriorated supplier relationships. Invoices were stacked in multiple piles, suggesting payment schedules that required careful coordination. A calculator sat open next to spreadsheets that probably tracked cash flow projections made complicated by modified vendor terms. His posture conveyed the weight of maintaining success built on increasingly unstable foundations. The confident restaurateur who had dismissed my partnership claims 5 months earlier had been replaced by someone struggling to manage the consequences of his own deception. His movements were deliberate but tired, lacking the energy that had characterized his earlier enthusiasm for restaurant operations. I approached the back door with calm determination, my phone containing the recorded conversation that would end this prolonged conflict. Brady looked up when I knocked, and his expression immediately confirmed that he had been expecting this confrontation for weeks, possibly months. The weariness in his eyes suggested that part of him might actually welcome the opportunity to stop maintaining his elaborate fiction. "We need to talk," I said, echoing his words from that February evening that had initiated our conflict. Brady nodded without surprise and gestured toward the chair across from his desk. The office felt smaller than I remembered, cluttered with evidence of the management challenges that had replaced his earlier operational confidence. Supplier invoices demanding immediate payment sat next to staff schedules that reflected the careful attention required to maintain morale despite underlying tension. The newspaper clipping featuring his fraudulent success story remained prominently displayed, a reminder of the public narrative that had made his current position so precarious. I settled into the chair with deliberate composure, noting how Brady's visible tension contrasted with my own calm preparation. This conversation represented the culmination of 5 months of patient strategy, and I intended to control its pace and direction from the beginning. "You look tired," I observed, genuinely concerned despite our conflict. "Running a restaurant is demanding work." "It's been challenging lately," Brady admitted, his voice carrying exhaustion that probably surprised him with its honesty. "Supplier relationships have become more complicated than I expected." "I imagine they have." I placed my phone on the desk between us, the device that contained evidence of his original promise. "Brady, we both know why I'm here." His eyes fixed on the phone with the recognition of someone who had been dreading this moment while simultaneously hoping it would arrive. The weight of maintaining contradictory narratives across multiple relationships had clearly become unsustainable. I pressed play without additional commentary, allowing Brady's own voice from 6 months earlier to fill the small office with devastating clarity. "Put in the 200,000 and we'll be 50-50 partners. I promise." Brady closed his eyes and leaned back in his chair, his body language conveying complete resignation. When he opened them again, something fundamental had shifted in his expression. The defensive calculation that had characterized our February confrontation had been replaced by the exhaustion of someone who no longer possessed the energy to maintain his elaborate deception. His own words hung in the air between us, undeniable evidence of commitments that no amount of subsequent lies could erase. "What do you want, Linda?" Brady's voice carried the exhaustion of someone who had been waiting months for this conversation while dreading its arrival. I reached into my purse and withdrew the manila folder that had been prepared weeks ago, its contents representing 5 months of methodical planning rather than impulsive revenge. The legal documents inside reflected careful consultation with Jennifer and strategic thinking about outcomes that would serve justice without destroying the business we had both invested in creating. "I want what was promised," I said, placing the folder on his desk next to the scattered invoices and payment schedules. "But I want it with terms that acknowledge what really happened here." Brady opened the folder with the deliberate attention of someone who understood that his choices had been systematically eliminated. The partnership agreement was comprehensive but fair, more generous than pure vindication would have demanded but structured to prevent any repetition of his betrayal. 60-40. I explained as his eyes moved down the document's opening paragraphs. I receive majority ownership in recognition of my capital investment and your attempted fraud. You maintain operational control and receive 40% of profits, plus your management salary. The terms acknowledged both the financial reality of my investment and the operational reality of Brady's daily restaurant management. He would continue running the kitchen and overseeing staff, but within a framework that recognized my role as the primary financial partner rather than a peripheral investor. Brady studied each section with careful attention, his expression revealing his recognition that every detail had been considered and every potential objection anticipated. The agreement included specific provisions for decision-making authority, profit distribution, operational responsibilities, and dispute resolution procedures. Most importantly, it contained clear acknowledgement that I had been promised equal partnership in exchange for my initial investment. These terms are actually more generous than what we originally agreed, Brady said finally, his voice carrying reluctant appreciation for the document's fairness. They reflect current reality rather than our original handshake agreement, I replied. Your actions over the past 5 months have demonstrated that equal partnership requires more formal structure than we initially established. The 60-40 split served multiple purposes beyond simple financial adjustment. It provided me with controlling interest that would prevent future unilateral decisions while allowing Brady sufficient profit participation to maintain his investment in the restaurant's success. The arrangement recognized his culinary expertise and operational management while establishing clear boundaries around financial and strategic decisions. Brady continued reading, his attention focusing on sections that outlined our respective responsibilities and authorities. The agreement granted him complete autonomy over menu development, kitchen operations, and staff management while requiring my approval for major financial commitments, vendor changes, or expansion plans. The structure balanced operational efficiency with financial protection. And if I refuse these terms? He asked, though his tone suggested he already understood the consequences. I leaned forward slightly, maintaining the calm demeanor that had characterized our entire conversation. Then I take that recording to everyone who matters. The bank that approved your business loan based on representations about your capital investment. The business journal that featured your entrepreneurial success story. Every customer who believes they're supporting an honest local businessman. The threat was not delivered with anger or satisfaction, but with the measured certainty of someone who had spent months preparing for every possible outcome. Brady's systematic lying had created vulnerabilities that made public exposure devastatingly effective, particularly in a small town where restaurant success depended on community trust and personal reputation. Your credit with suppliers is already strained because of the questions my conversations have raised, I continued. A public revelation of fraud would eliminate any remaining goodwill. The restaurant would be empty within weeks, and your culinary career would be finished permanently. Brady's face revealed his understanding that this was not hyperbolic rhetoric but accurate assessment of his position. Small-town businesses survived through reputation and relationships, both of which would be irreparably damaged by documented evidence of systematic deception. The recording provided indisputable proof that would make denial impossible and defense futile. You've thought this through completely, he said, his voice carrying grudging respect alongside resignation. I've had 5 months to consider every angle, I replied. This outcome provides justice without destruction. You keep your restaurant and your role, but under terms that acknowledge the truth rather than the fiction you've been maintaining. Brady picked up the pen that lay beside his calculator, weighing it in his hand as if testing its significance. The simple ballpoint instrument represented the moment when his elaborate deception would end and our genuine partnership would begin. His movements were deliberate and resigned, lacking any suggestion of enthusiasm but containing clear acceptance of necessity. He signed each required section with careful precision, his signature appearing multiple times throughout the document as various provisions required acknowledgement. I watched his face during the signing process, noting the absence of anger or resentment. Instead, Brady seemed to experience something approaching relief, as if the burden of maintaining contradictory narratives had become more exhausting than accepting defeat. When he finished signing, Brady set the pen down with finality and leaned back in his chair. The partnership agreement now bore both our signatures, transforming months of conflict into a legally binding collaboration that reflected actual contributions rather than fabricated histories. I felt something unexpected as I collected the signed documents. Rather than triumph or vindication, I experienced profound relief that the 5-month ordeal had concluded with justice rather than destruction. Brady would retain his position and significant profit participation, while I would receive the partnership recognition that had been promised from the beginning. "We're partners now," I said as I returned the folder to my purse. "Real partners. The kind who succeed together instead of one stealing from the other." Brady nodded, his expression unreadable but no longer hostile. "What happens next?" "Next we run a successful restaurant. You handle daily operations, menu development and staff management. I handle financial oversight, strategic planning and major vendor relationships." I stood up, preparing to leave but wanting to establish clear expectations for our ongoing collaboration. The partnership meetings will be monthly, focusing on business performance rather than personal conflicts. We'll both participate in major decisions, but within our respective areas of expertise. Most importantly, we'll both acknowledge publicly what each of us has contributed to this success. Brady remained seated as I moved toward the door, processing his new reality with the careful attention of someone adjusting to fundamentally altered circumstances. His expression suggested neither happiness nor anger, but rather the complex acceptance of someone who recognized that his choices had led inevitably to this outcome. "Linda," he called as I reached the door. "For what it's worth, the restaurant really is successful. We both built something worthwhile here." I turned back to face him, noting the first genuine statement he had made about our shared contributions in over 5 months. "Yes, we did. Now we can both take credit for what we actually accomplished." The late evening air felt crisp against my skin as I walked to my car, the partnership agreement secure in my purse and the recorded conversation no longer needed as evidence. Brady remained in his office, surrounded by the invoices and schedules that would now be managed within the framework of our legitimate partnership rather than his elaborate fiction. 6 months passed with the methodical rhythm of successful business operations. The restaurant flourished under our official partnership arrangement in ways that surprised both of us. The clarity of our ownership structure had eliminated the uncertainty that had strained supplier relationships during the previous months of conflict. Mrs. Henderson returned to extending 30-day payment terms, her confidence restored by transparent communication about financial responsibilities and decision-making authority. Our monthly partnership meetings developed their own professional cadence, conducted in the restaurant's office after closing time on the 3rd Tuesday of each month. Brady would present operational reports covering staff performance, menu development and customer feedback. I would review financial statements, supplier contracts and strategic planning considerations. The conversations focused entirely on business metrics and growth opportunities, maintaining careful distance from personal history or emotional reconciliation. The meetings revealed Brady's genuine competence as an operational manager alongside my own skills in financial oversight and strategic planning. Our complementary abilities created synergies that neither of us had anticipated during our original partnership discussions. Brady's culinary innovations combined with my vendor negotiations produced profit margins that exceeded our initial projections. Customer satisfaction remained consistently high, while staff turnover dropped significantly as employees responded positively to the stability of clear management structure. Community acceptance of our partnership proved remarkably smooth, aided by the fact that most local residents had never fully understood our previous arrangement. The Business Journal's follow-up interview with Brady provided public correction to his earlier fraudulent narrative, though the reporter framed the story as clarification rather than retraction. Brady handled the interview with professional grace, acknowledging my crucial investment and partnership while avoiding specific details about the timeline of our formal arrangement. "Linda's investment and business expertise have been essential to our success from the beginning," Brady told the journalist, his words carrying accuracy that satisfied public requirements while preserving his dignity. "This partnership represents the natural formalization of a collaboration that has always been central to the restaurant's development." The article pleased family members who had sensed underlying tensions without understanding their source. Our parents expressed relief that their children had worked out their business arrangements amicably, while Aunt Patricia gradually resumed warmer interactions with me as the partnership became publicly acknowledged. Cousin David seemed particularly satisfied that his marketing efforts now supported an officially recognized collaborative venture rather than participating in Brady's solo entrepreneur fiction. Family gatherings transformed into celebrations of our shared success, with Brady consistently acknowledging my contributions in ways that satisfied both public expectations and legal requirements. His expressions of gratitude carried layers of meaning that only we fully understood, representing compliance with our partnership agreement rather than genuine appreciation for our collaborative relationship. Linda's support and partnership have made all of this possible, Brady would say during holiday toasts, his words technically accurate while maintaining emotional distance. The public reconciliation satisfied family observers while masking the complex power dynamics that governed our actual interactions. Yet beneath the surface of professional success, unresolved tensions remained clearly visible to anyone who knew us well. Brady fulfilled his partnership obligations with meticulous competence, but his demeanor suggested someone operating within constraints rather than embracing collaboration. His interactions with me carried the careful politeness of diplomatic relations between nations that maintain peace without friendship. I observed Brady's psychological state during our monthly meetings and public appearances, noting his professional excellence alongside what appeared to be resignation rather than enthusiasm about our partnership. He seemed to view our arrangement as elegant imprisonment that provided financial success while limiting his autonomy. Every decision that required my approval, every monthly meeting that reviewed his performance, every public acknowledgement of my role served as reminders of his diminished control over the business he had attempted to claim exclusively. His resentment was never expressed directly, but it appeared in subtle ways that probably escaped casual observation. Brady's menu innovations continued with the same creativity and quality that had established the restaurant's reputation, but his explanations during partnership meetings lacked the passionate enthusiasm he had shown during our original collaboration. He discussed new dishes and seasonal changes with professional competence rather than personal excitement, as if distancing himself emotionally from work that was no longer entirely his own. Staff members occasionally asked me about Brady's more reserved demeanor, wondering if the pressures of restaurant management were affecting his usual warmth and energy. I provided non-committal responses about the challenges of business growth while privately recognizing that Brady's emotional withdrawal reflected his ongoing struggle with our altered relationship dynamic. The restaurant's financial success provided material satisfaction that complicated my assessment of our arrangement's ultimate value. Monthly profit distributions exceeded my original investment projections, while the business's reputation continued growing throughout the region. Food critics praised Brady's culinary vision while business publications highlighted our partnership as a model of complementary expertise and shared investment. Yet financial success and public recognition could not address the fundamental question that occupied my thoughts during quiet moments. Had justice and healing become the same outcome in our situation? I had achieved everything I had set out to accomplish through my patient campaign. Brady had learned important lessons about family loyalty, business honesty, and the consequences of betrayal. The restaurant provided ongoing income while demonstrating that our combined skills created value neither of us could have achieved independently. However, achieving justice had not repaired the family trust that Brady's original betrayal had shattered. We worked together effectively as business partners while remaining emotionally distant as siblings. Our professional relationship succeeded within carefully defined boundaries that prevented the genuine collaboration and mutual respect that had characterized our initial partnership planning. During family gatherings, I watched Brady interact with other relatives and recognized that our conflict had changed him in ways that extended beyond our business relationship. His natural warmth and spontaneous humor appeared diminished, replaced by more careful and controlled social interactions. The brother who had once sketched menu ideas on napkins with infectious enthusiasm now approached even casual conversations with measured consideration of their potential implications. I wondered whether the psychological cost of his betrayal and its consequences had exceeded the value of the lessons he had learned. Brady had gained hard experience in business integrity and family loyalty, but at the expense of the confident optimism that had made his original restaurant vision so compelling. Our successful partnership had preserved the business while potentially damaging aspects of his personality that had contributed to its initial appeal. The complexity of these considerations left me with questions rather than conclusions about the ultimate value of my strategic response to his betrayal. As I sat in the restaurant during busy dinner services, watching Brady command his kitchen with professional expertise while maintaining emotional distance from the environment we had created together, I recognized that our story remained fundamentally incomplete. We had achieved stable business success and legal justice, but genuine reconciliation would require additional evolution in our complex relationship. The restaurant hummed with satisfied customers and profitable operations, yet the warmth that had characterized our original collaboration remained absent from both our partnership meetings and family interactions. Perhaps healing would develop gradually as the memory of betrayal faded and the reality of shared success created new foundations for trust. Or perhaps some violations of family loyalty created permanent changes that could be managed but never fully repaired. For now, I felt genuinely proud of what we had built together while remaining alert to the unresolved tensions that would continue influencing our future as partners, siblings, and guardians of a success we had created through conflict as much as collaboration. If this story of calculated justice had you captivated from start to finish, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Linda played that recorded conversation in Brady's cluttered office, watching 5 months of lies crumble in an instant. What was your favorite moment from Linda's methodical campaign? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't miss more compelling stories of family betrayal and strategic revenge. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.